The Joy of Work by Bruce Daisley. Read by Bruce Daisley. Introduction. Love where you work. What was your worst ever job? On my 16th birthday, 11 inches shorter than the 6 foot I stand now, I started working at a fast food restaurant in Birmingham city centre. I was the very opposite of a confident teenager, self-conscious about my unbroken voice and seriously lacking in swagger. Fresh to the world of work, I was also terrified of stopping to speak to anyone in case my bosses fired me. In the same way that no pupil would ever confess to liking school, I had it in my head that it wasn't a done thing to aspire to like one's job. My role was to go there and perform the task of wiping tables in silence. In my meekness, I became a very compliant employee, once even fulfilling the store manager's demand that I clear large amounts of rat excrement from under a sink using only paper towels. A good day was being spared cleaning and told instead to don a full-body costume and venture out into Birmingham Corporation Street to hand discount leaflets to unsupportive football supporters. But overall, was it my worst job? In retrospect, possibly. At the time, probably not. Because once I'd learned that chatting to my colleagues was allowed, even the longest and most arduous days felt enjoyable. It became clear to me that my own happiness was directly affected by how many times I laughed every day. As long as there were moments of levity, I felt a bond with the people around me. Spending long hours grafting alongside them felt better than sitting at home waiting for someone to invent the internet. Jobs in pubs, factories, restaurants and hotels followed. It has to be acknowledged, it's a lot easier to be comfortable with these jobs when you're not reliant on bringing home enough money from them to feed a family. As I traipsed from one to the next, I started to notice a peculiar phenomenon. The greatest places to work, I found, weren't necessarily the creation of some visionary leader delivering his well-crafted plan. They often seemed to thrive despite the bosses. One Mexican restaurant I worked in positively came to life when the monstrous owner had performed one last tantrum and stomped off the premises. He was a weapons-grade arsehole, but that place plated up an almighty chimichanga the moment he left the scene. So I started to realise that the culture of a place is not simply down to the bosses. It's the responsibility of everyone. All of us can play a part in making a workplace welcoming and rewarding. Steve Jobs famously once argued that you've got to love what you do. That's clearly easier said than done. It's one of those casual exhortations that can leave people feeling inadequate. If we should expect to love our jobs, then who's to blame if we don't? Is it our fault? Could it even be used against us? If you really wanted this job, you wouldn't be asking for more pay, / saying you've got too much to do, / complaining about stress. Maybe we should find someone else who really wants to work here. But while I think it's wrong to place the burden of fulfillment at work on the individual, there are things that each of us can do to make our job, at the very least, a little more enjoyable. The trouble is, all the evidence suggests things are going in the opposite direction. That suspicion that work used to be way more fun than it is today really does seem to have a basis in reality. Many of us don't love what we do, and we feel exhausted trying. A Gallup survey of the global workforce suggested that only 13% of employees are engaged in their jobs, meaning that they're highly involved in and enthusiastic about their workplaces. For the UK, the figure's even lower, 8%. We're worn down by a gnawing feeling of job insecurity and by a work environment that seems to be impinging ever more on our free time as we battle to keep up with emails or glance at our smartphone on a Sunday morning in case that ping we've just heard is the herald of some minor emergency. Despite my experience with the rat droppings, I've generally been fortunate during my working life. In the last decade, I've been lucky enough to work for the likes of Google, Twitter and YouTube. Prior to that, I worked at the companies responsible for Heat and Q magazines, Capital Radio and Kiss. These have been great places to work, and as I've moved on to my current role and become responsible for teams myself, I've felt a proud delight when visitors have said how much they liked the atmosphere at our Twitter London office, or have emailed to ask for some hints on how to improve their workplace. But the reason I decided to turn a long-term interest in work culture into a study was that...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?